it makes something escape within your mind, makes your imagination fly. So let me just give you one more example before we go into Spinoza. Bowerbirds. This is a species of birds. Remember, birds are the only other animals, in addition to primates, that are monogamous. And they establish relationships with just one female bird. There are several species of bowerbirds, and I'm not going to be able to really draw them nicely, so they're going to look more like chickens.
Is it the dodo bird?
Which one is the front, which one is the back? Okay, the first species of bowerbirds, thank you. The first species of bowerbirds has a beautiful set of blue, iridescent blue feathers. He is so beautiful, you can tell that he knows he's beautiful. He's just like pacing around waiting for the female, going like, I'm going to get any female that comes my way. You know, I'm blue, I'm cool, you know, I'm just like it, right? So, let me just give you let me just backtrack a little bit. Birds are forced by females, male birds are forced by females to build a nest to be kind of like their investment in the family that's coming. The reason why is this. In certain species, not in all species, but in certain species, the females produce only a few very expensive eggs, very energetically expensive eggs, while the males produce tons and tons of very cheap sperm. Right? We are one of those species. I was going through a egg bank or one of those websites one day, just out of curiosity. I just wanted to know the prices, right? And the prices were, one female egg, $15,000. One cup of sperm, $10. I'm going, I felt so cheap and used. You know what I'm saying? It's like the shame. The shame. But for the same reason, female birds want to know, hey man, I'm gonna have sex with you, and I'm going to have some of your offspring, but I don't want you to go flying around to find the next one with your bunch of cheap sperm. They're $10 a cup, So what they do is they make them build a nest. The bird is like totally exhausted at the end of the thing. It's like, oh my god, and so, yeah, okay, now go ahead, try to find another female and build another nest. Are you out of your mind? So it's sort of like the way in which nature balances the things. If the female got stuck with very expensive eggs with cost, energetic, metabolic energy to build, and in many cases they're going to be the ones doing the parental care, well, then at least the male bird should do something, right? Except if you're really good looking, right? That is always the exception. And so the first bowerbird, number one, has blue feathers throughout its body and builds a nest that's built out of only a few twigs, and architecturally it's like quite uninteresting. He doesn't care, of course. He's like the coolest guy. Then there's another subspecies of the same species. They are basically the same bird. Now it's basically even worse. Wow, is that a bird? Well, let's put at least a second thing. In which only a very small portion of the top of the head and the top of the wings is blue, and the rest is just drab brown. Right? So he's not nearly as good looking as the previous one, so he's forced to build a much more elaborate nest with several layers, and even a kind of like already a little kind of a house kind of thing, which took him a lot more effort and is much more artistic than the first one. Finally, the third type of bowerbird
is bold. That's the work of his life.
Hey, I'm going bald. Is that a cheap shot? You know? Yeah, cheap shot or what? No, he's lost all the blue feathers. So he only has brown feathers. And compared to the first bird, he looks, it's like, oh my God, I'm not even going to be close to that bird. On the other hand, he builds an extremely elaborate cross twigs. And, more importantly, goes and steals blue objects, like blue soda caps, blue ribbons, and begins decorating, puts a blue soda cap here, puts another blue soda cap here, wraps a blue ribbon. And what I find very interesting about this is that the first bird gets his blue expressivity, his color expressivity from its genes. So it's a very little artistic bird, and the color, even though it's very expressive, is very stratified. It's right there in those genes that have been sedimented. By the time we get to this guy, it's almost as if the color had migrated from the surface of the bird to the nest itself. As if this guy had lost the genes that give you blue color, but with his behavior had now achieved the same result. A very bright blue object that signifies investment, that signifies my territory, and that attracts as many female birds as the first one does. Except that now he's choosing the blue objects. This bowerbird is much more destratified than this bowerbird. And with this bowerbird has now found behavioral expressivity. He's now expressing itself, and by expressing itself, it is expressing the potential in the plane of immanence. It is in a way singing the praises of God, or in this case, painting the praises of God, of that immanent, impersonal God that is just that assemblage of phase spaces representing the patterns of becoming for the whole universe. But you can still sing the praises of that impersonal God, and that is what the blackbird does with song, or what the bowerbird does with its colors. So what Deleuze in that chapter of 1,000 Plateaus called On the Refrain wants us to understand is that part of what we need to do as artists is not only avoid the stratifications that society imposes on us. You are not a child anymore. You can't do that. You are not an adolescent anymore. Find a job. You are, that job is now too much like a summer job. Find a real job. Get married. Settle down. Not only either escape or postpone some of those strata that are kind of waiting us as our lives begin to develop, but also find the stratified areas of the world in all the other strata. Look at nature, look at flowers, look at the sky, look at the constant churning of new patterns of clouds. Look at thunderstorms and the beautiful patterns of electric lighting. Look at the sea and its constant foamy, vortex creation of different waves, even in its own repetition. It's a repetition of the same wave, but with difference, because every wave is different. And let the sound of the sea, let the sound of the bird song, let the colors that you see around, carry you away in a line of flight that will take you closer to the plane of immanence. Finally, we have psychological strata. I already talked a little bit about that yesterday. If our ego, if we believe Hume, our self, our psychological self, our ego, or the stable part of our personalities, is just a stratification. It's a hardening in a field of fluid intensities. And it is in fact a stratum because it is hardened by habit, by repetitions of the same routine